Have you ever noticed how a decision can live inside you long before you make it, quietly shaping the way you see, the way you listen, the way you move through a room? Not the loud declarations, not the resolutions you announce to others or write down with force. Something quieter, a leaning, a subtle orientation, like the way a plant grows toward light without deciding to, without effort, simply because that is its nature, responding to what it meets. Right intention is not about forcing yourself into goodness. It is about noticing what your mind is already leaning toward and asking whether that leaning leads toward suffering or toward freedom. Take a breath now. Let it arrive without managing it. Feel where your body meets the surface beneath you. Intention is like the set of a sail. The wind will blow regardless. Thoughts will arise, circumstances will shift, other people will do what they do. But the angle of the sail determines where you go, not through control, through orientation. Through a quiet choice made again and again about which direction you are willing to move. You have probably felt this in small moments. You are about to speak, and something in you knows whether the words forming are meant to clarify or to wound. You are scrolling, reaching for distraction, and beneath the motion is an intention, maybe to avoid, maybe to numb, maybe just to fill space. The action looks the same from outside, but the sail is set differently. The Buddha spoke of 3 kinds of right intention, 3 directions. The mind can lean that lead away from suffering. Renunciation, which is the intention to let go rather than grasp. Goodwill, which is the intention to meet life with care rather than hostility. And harmlessness, which is the intention not to cause pain even when you are hurting. These are not moral commands, they are observations about what works. What leads to peace and what leads to tightness, what opens and what closes. Renunciation sounds austere, but it is only the willingness to stop feeding what burns you. If you keep touching something that cuts your hand, renunciation is noticing the clutching and considering whether you might open your fingers. Not because you should, because the pain is real and the holding is optional. Feel your breath again. The inhale arrives. It does not stay. The exhale releases. It does not cling. This is renunciation at the most basic level. The body already knows how to let go. Goodwill is simpler than it sounds. It is a small turning toward rather than away. Toward the person in front of you, even when they are difficult. Toward yourself, even when you feel like a failure. Not sentimentality. Not pretending harm is not harm. Just the basic intention not to add cruelty to what is already hard. You can feel this in your chest sometimes, a softening or a hardening. The same situation, the same words, but beneath them 2 different sails. One set toward defensiveness, the other toward curiosity. One toward blame, the other toward understanding. The wind is the same. The destination is not. And harmlessness is the intention to move through the world without leaving wreckage. Not because you are pure, because you have seen what harm does, how it echoes, how it returns, how it never quite resolves the way you thought it would. This does not mean you become passive. It means you stop using pain as a tool. You stop believing that your anger, your coldness, your cutting words will fix what is broken. They will not. They never do. Harmlessness is what remains when you stop pretending they will. Listen to the sounds around you right now. Notice how they arise without asking permission. Notice how your mind meets them, either with resistance or with space. Right intention is not something you perfect, it is something you return to. You set the sail, and the wind shifts, and you notice you have drifted, and you adjust again, not with shame, not with force, with the same patience you would bring to a garden, noticing what is growing, noticing what needs tending. The power in this is not dramatic, it does not announce itself, but over time you begin to see that the small leanings accumulate. The tiny adjustments in how you meet your own mind, how you meet another person, how you meet the moment when you want to lash out or collapse or disappear. These are not small things. They are the hinge points where suffering continues or begins to ease. So we are not here to build a better self. We are here to notice the sail, to feel the wind, to see where the leaning takes us, and to ask quietly whether this direction leads toward freedom. We move through the day carried by currents we did not choose. The hand reaches for the phone, the mouth opens with a sharp reply, the mind drifts into planning or replaying, and we arrive minutes later wondering where we went. Between the wanting and the doing, there is almost no space at all. We act before we notice what we actually want. The Buddha said that all experience is preceded by mind, led by mind, made by mind. Not that mind creates the world from nothing, but that every action begins as an inner movement first. A thought, a feeling, a leaning toward or away. This movement is intention, and it shapes what follows the way a river chooses its course before the spring melt. The direction is set quietly, beneath the surface, and by the time the water begins to flow, the path is already forming. Most of us live downstream from our own intentions. We see the results, the words spoken or the time lost, and we think that is where the action began. But the action began earlier. It began in a flicker of wanting, a tightening in the chest, a small lean toward comfort or away from discomfort. We do not usually see this moment. We are not trained to look for it. Right intention is not about forcing the mind into better thoughts. It is about becoming aware of the moment before the action, the instant when direction is chosen. This is not a moral test. It is simply a fact of how we work. There is always a gap, however brief, between the impulse and the movement. In that gap lives the possibility of choice. Consider the river again before the thaw. The ground is still frozen. The snow has not yet begun to melt. But already the shape of the land is there. The slope, the rocks, the low places where water will gather. When the melt comes, the river will follow these contours without thinking. It will move where the ground allows. Our intentions are like this. They follow the contours of habit, of old hurts, of what we have practiced again and again. The water does not decide in the moment. The course was prepared long before. But we are not only rivers. We can notice the slope. We can see where the current wants to go. And in seeing it, we are no longer entirely carried. This is the quiet power of wholesome resolve. Not forcing a new path with effort and strain, but learning to feel the direction before the movement begins. You might try this just once today, not as a project, not as self-improvement, simply as an experiment in awareness. Between one impulse and the action that usually follows, pause. Let there be a breath. You do not need to change what happens next. You do not need to choose the better option or correct yourself. Just notice that there is a gap. Feel the wanting before the doing. This might happen when you reach for your phone without knowing why, or when irritation rises and the words are already forming, or when the mind starts to spin a familiar worry and the body prepares to clench. In that instant, before the hand moves, or the mouth opens, or the thought takes over completely, there is a moment. It is brief. It is easy to miss. But it is always there. The gap is not empty. It is full of information. You might feel the pull of the habit, the way the body leans into the familiar action. You might notice a tightness, a heat, a restlessness. You might sense the wanting itself, raw and simple, before it becomes a story about what you need or what went wrong. This is not analysis. This is just sensing what is present. When you pause even once, something shifts, not dramatically, not permanently, but the current is no longer entirely automatic. You have felt the gap between wanting and doing, and once you know it is there, you cannot fully unknow it. The river still flows, but now there is awareness in the flowing. Right intention is not built in a single moment. It is the slow work of noticing these small gaps again and again until they become familiar. Each time you pause, you are training the mind to see its own movement. You are learning the shape of your intentions before they harden into action. And in that learning, the course begins to change. Not because you forced it, but because awareness itself is a kind of redirection. The spring melt will come. The water will move. But the river that knows its own course flows differently than the river that does not. We think we move through the day making choices. We believe we're steering. But most of what we do comes from something quieter than choice, something already present before we notice it. That something is intention, and we rarely see it clearly. You can watch this in small moments. You reach for your phone, you speak before you've decided to speak. You turn away from discomfort or lean toward pleasure. These aren't random. They come from intention, but the intention is so fast, so habitual, that it feels like reflex. We don't see what actually moves us forward. We see the action, but we miss the current beneath it. The teaching says that intention, rooted in renunciation, goodwill, and harmlessness, leads to peace. These three aren't moral commands. They're streams, three streams feeding one clear pool. When you look closely at any intention that brings ease rather than tension, you'll find one of these three at its source. Renunciation here doesn't mean giving up everything you own. It means letting go. It's the intention that releases rather than grips. You feel it when you decide not to argue a point that doesn't matter, or when you stop refreshing a screen that won't give you what you want. There's a small exhale in it, a stepping back. This is renunciation as a living thing, not as a rule. Goodwill is simpler than it sounds. It's the intention that wants things to go well for yourself or another. Not in a sticky way, not with strings attached, just a quiet wish. You feel it when you let someone merge in traffic, or when you hope a friend's difficult day gets easier. It doesn't require action. It's a direction the mind takes, a lean toward care. Harmlessness is the intention not to add pain, not to yourself, not to another. It shows up when you choose not to say the cutting thing, even though it's true. When you stop pushing yourself past exhaustion just to prove something. When you decide not to make someone smaller so you can feel larger. It's a refusal to use harm as a tool. These three streams feed one clear pool because they all move in the same direction. They move away from clinging and toward release, away from hostility and toward ease. When intention comes from one of these three roots, the mind doesn't tangle itself. There's less residue, less to carry forward. But we don't often see which stream is feeding the moment. We act, and then we justify. We tell ourselves a story about why we did what we did, and the story usually sounds reasonable. But the story comes after. The intention came first, and it came from one of two places, either from craving, aversion, and the willingness to harm, or from letting go, goodwill and harmlessness. One set of roots leads to tightness, the other leads to peace. You can begin to see this by naming the root of one intention today. Not every intention, just one. Pick a moment where you notice yourself about to act. Before you send the message, before you make the choice, before you move, pause. Ask quietly, what's feeding this? Is this letting go or holding on? Is this goodwill or something sharper? Is this harmless or is there a small edge of wanting to wound? You don't need to change the intention. You're just looking. The act of naming it brings it into view. And once you see it, the three streams become distinct. You start to recognize the difference between an intention rooted in release and one rooted in grasping. between one that wants ease and one that wants to win, between one that refuses harm and one that justifies it. This isn't about being good, it's about seeing clearly. When you see the root, you see where the action will lead. An intention rooted in clinging will create more clinging. An intention rooted in aversion will create more aversion. An intention rooted in harm will leave a mark. But an intention rooted in letting go, goodwill, or harmlessness moves like water. It doesn't stick, it doesn't burn, it feeds the clear pool. The three streams become recognizable, not through thinking about them, but through meeting them directly. You feel the difference in the body. Renunciation feels like space opening. Goodwill feels warm and steady. Harmlessness feels clean. And once you've felt them, you know them. They become familiar, the way you know the difference between hunger and thirst without needing to explain it. This is the quiet power of wholesome resolve. It doesn't announce itself, it doesn't demand attention. It simply moves in a direction that doesn't create more suffering, and that direction repeated becomes a path. You walk into a room and something shifts. Maybe no one says anything yet. Maybe you haven't even made eye contact. But already there is a quality in the air, something you brought with you from the hallway, from the car, from the argument you had 3 hours ago. It clings to you the way smoke clings to fabric. You might not notice it yourself, but it enters before you do. This is the quiet work of intention, not the grand declarations we make about who we want to become, not the goals we write down or the promises we speak aloud. This is the mood beneath the mood, the leaning of the mind before it forms a thought. It shapes the encounter before the first word lands. In Zen teaching, there is a simple observation. The mind you bring to the gate is the mind that opens it, not the mind you wish you had, not the mind you're trying to cultivate, the actual mind with its weather, its residue, its unspoken tilt. If you arrive at a conversation already braced for conflict, the gate opens into conflict. If you enter a room carrying resentment from somewhere else, that resentment touches everything inside, even the neutral things. This is not about blame. It is about seeing clearly. Most of us move through the day unaware of what we are carrying. We think intention begins when we decide to act. But intention is already present in the quality of attention we bring. It is there in the tightness of the jaw, in the speed of the breath, in the small, habitual recoil when someone's name comes up. The scent that clings to your clothes from the last place you stood does not announce itself. You do not feel it on yourself. But when you sit down next to someone, they might catch it without knowing what it is. A faint note of something. Tension. Distraction, warmth, irritation. It moves into the space between you and colors what happens next. You can test this in small moments. Before you open the door to your home, pause. What are you bringing across the threshold? Is it the frustration from traffic, the worry about tomorrow, the need to be right about something that happened earlier? None of these are wrong, but they are active. They have momentum. And they will meet whoever is on the other side of that door before you say hello. The same is true before you answer the phone, before you walk into a meeting, before you respond to a message that irritated you. There is a moment, barely noticeable, where you could sense what you are about to bring forward, not to change it by force, not to shame yourself for it, just to know it is there. This knowing is the beginning of right intention. It does not require you to have pure motives or perfectly wholesome thoughts. It only asks that you see what is already moving. When you see it, something shifts, not always dramatically, but the grip loosens slightly, the automaticity softens. You are no longer quite so fused with the mood you are carrying. Sometimes what you notice is subtle. A slight edge in your chest, a readiness to defend, a wish to be seen a certain way. Other times it is obvious. You are angry and you know it. You are afraid, and it is loud. Either way, the practice is the same. Notice what mood you are bringing with you. Let it be seen inwardly before it moves outward. This is not about suppressing what arises. If anger is present, it is present. Pretending otherwise only sends it underground, where it becomes more corrosive. But there is a difference between moving from anger unconsciously and knowing that anger is the mind at the gate. In the knowing, there is a small gap. In that gap, you are not controlled. Right intention, in the Buddhist sense, is often translated as wholesome resolve. But resolve can sound effortful, like something you must build or maintain. What is closer to the teaching is a kind of orientation, a leaning toward non-harming, toward kindness, toward letting go. This leaning does not have to be loud or perfect. It can be quiet and partial, but it changes the scent you carry. When you notice the mood before you enter, you are not trying to replace it with something better. You are simply making it conscious. And in that consciousness, intention becomes workable. You see that you've been walking into rooms with your fists already half closed, or your heart already guarded, or your mind already rehearsing a defense. None of this was chosen deliberately. It simply accumulated like dust from the last place you stood. The weight of unexamined intention is this: it runs the encounter before you arrive. It decides the tone, the distance, the possibility. And you, unaware, believe you are responding freshly to what is in front of you, but you are responding to what you brought with you. The gate opens the way the mind is leaning, and most of the time we do not notice the lean. There is a moment when you first feel the pull of wanting. It might be the urge to check your phone again, or the thought that you need just one more thing before you can rest. The wanting itself is not a problem. It is the movement that follows. The way the mind leans forward, begins to plan, begins to insist. That tightens everything. We have been taught that letting go means pushing away. That renunciation is a kind of violence we direct at our own desires. So when we feel craving arise, we meet it with force. We tell ourselves we should not want this. We clench against the feeling. We try to throw the heavy bag into the river, hoping the current will carry it far from us. But the bag does not disappear. It sinks, and we stand on the shore, still feeling its weight in our arms. The Buddha spoke of renunciation differently. He did not teach the destruction of desire. He taught the end of being driven by it. There is a difference between feeling thirst and being commanded by thirst. One is a simple sensation. The other is a chain of reactions that pulls you forward without pause. When you set a heavy bag down, you do not fight with it. You do not scold it for being heavy. You simply notice the strain in your shoulders, the ache in your hands, and you release your grip. The bag rests on the ground. You stand beside it, lighter. This is closer to what renunciation feels like when it is not forced. Right intention begins here, in the space between the wanting and the doing. You feel the craving. You notice the way it wants to move you. And instead of obeying or resisting, you pause. You let it be present without feeding it. You do not add a story about why you should have it or why you should not. You do not make it mean something about who you are. You simply see it as a visitor passing through. This is not easy at first. The mind is used to answering every craving immediately. It believes that satisfaction is always one action away. So when you pause, the craving may grow louder. It may insist. It may tell you that this time is different, that this wanting is justified, that you will finally feel complete if you just follow through. But if you stay still, if you let the craving be there without feeding it, something shifts. The intensity peaks and then it softens. Not because you destroyed it, but because you stopped fueling it with attention and belief. You can practice this with something small. Choose a craving that visits often but does not overwhelm you. Maybe it is the urge to snack when you are not hungry. Maybe it is the impulse to fill silence with noise. Maybe it is the need to be right in a conversation that does not matter. When the craving arises, notice it. Feel where it lives in your body. Is there tightness in your chest, a restlessness in your hands, a heat in your thoughts? Stay with the sensation without acting. You are not trying to make it go away. You are simply not adding to it. You are setting the bag down instead of carrying it further. Let the craving be there, fully felt, without judgment. Watch how it changes. Watch how it moves. Notice that it does not stay the same. It rises, it shifts, it fades. It does not need you to do anything. This is where wholesome resolve quietly grows, not through effort, but through seeing. When you watch craving closely, you begin to notice that it is not as solid as it seemed. It is not a command. It is a pattern, a habit, a wave of energy that passes. And in seeing this, the grip loosens. Not because you forced it to, but because you stopped believing it was permanent. Renunciation, in this light, is soft. It is the natural result of seeing clearly. When you understand that feeding the craving does not end it, that it only creates the conditions for more craving, you lose interest in the chase. Not because you have become cold or detached, but because you have tasted something more restful. You have felt what it is like to stand still while the wanting moves through you. You have set the bag down and felt your hands open. This is not a one-time event. The cravings will return. They are part of the texture of being alive. But each time you practice letting one pass without feeding or fighting it, you learn something. You learn that you are not the craving. You learn that stillness is possible. You learn that renunciation is not about becoming less, but about becoming free from the constant pull forward. The resolve to live this way does not announce itself. It settles in quietly, the way light fills a room at dawn. We often think kindness must be felt before it can be real. That warmth should arrive first, and then we can act. But this reverses the actual sequence. We wait for a feeling that may never come, and in the meantime, nothing moves. Right intention does not wait. It turns the face towards something even when the body is cold. On a winter morning, you can step outside and face the sun without feeling its warmth immediately. The air is still sharp. Your skin does not respond right away, but you have turned. The orientation itself is the practice. The warmth, if it comes second. Metta, often translated as loving kindness, is not primarily an emotion. It is an intention, a quiet resolve. You form the words. May you be well, may you be safe, may you be at ease, and you direct them outward, whether the heart flutters with feeling or stays perfectly still. The instruction is not to manufacture warmth. It is to choose a direction. This is especially clear when the person in mind is difficult, someone who has caused harm, someone whose presence tightens your chest. If you wait to feel kindness toward them, you may wait forever. The old hurt does not dissolve on command. But you can still turn your face. You can still say the words silently without needing them to land in your body as sensation. You might sit quietly and bring this person to mind. Not their whole story, not every grievance, just their face or their name. And then, very simply, you offer the phrase, "May you be well." You do not manufacture a smile. You do not force your shoulders to soften. You just say it, the way you might plant a seed without knowing if the ground is ready. The intention is the planting. What grows from it is not yours to control. This is not pretending. It is not spiritual bypassing. You are not saying the harm did not happen. You are not saying you must like this person or agree with them or invite them back into your life. You are simply choosing for a moment not to harden further. You are turning your face, even though the air is cold. The metaphor holds because it is ordinary. You do not stand in the sun and demand to feel warm. You know that orientation comes first. You know that the body catches up in its own time, or it does not. Either way, you have turned. That turning is not nothing. It shifts the angle of your whole day. In the same way, the intention to wish someone well shifts something, even when no feeling follows. It interrupts the loop of rehearsing their wrongness. It makes a small space where there was only tightness. You are not doing this to become a better person. You are doing it because clinging to aversion is exhausting, and this is one way to stop feeding it. You can try this now or later when you are sitting still. Think of one person who is difficult for you. Not the hardest person. Start with someone at the edge of difficulty, someone who irritates more than wounds. Picture them lightly, without detail. Then say, silently, "May you be well." If nothing happens in your chest, that is fine. Say it again. "May you be safe. May you be at ease." Let the words be simple and slow. Do not reach for emotion. Just turn your face. You may notice resistance. That is normal. The mind may say, "Why should I wish them well when they did not wish me well?" Let that thought be there. It does not need to be argued with. Underneath it, you can still choose the intention. The two can exist at the same time, the resistance and the turning. Neither cancels the other. What you are learning is that goodwill is not a reward for good behavior, yours or theirs. It is an orientation you can choose, moment by moment, regardless of what arises. This is the quiet power of wholesome resolve. It does not wait for conditions to be perfect. It does not insist on feeling a certain way. It simply points in a direction and holds steady. Over time, this steadiness changes things. Not because you forced warmth into being, but because you stopped feeding the opposite. You stopped rehearsing the story of their wrongness. You stopped tightening every time their name appeared in your mind. The space that opens is not dramatic, it is small and quiet. But it is real. Goodwill, then, is not sentiment, it is stance. It is the willingness to turn your face, even when the morning is cold, even when nothing in you wants to move. The intention itself is enough. The rest, if it comes later. There is a moment before the words leave your mouth when your jaw tightens. You might not notice it. The muscles along your chin harden just slightly, your teeth press together. The body knows before you do that something sharp is coming. This tightening happens in the space between feeling and speaking. Someone says something that irritates you. A small heat rises. Then, almost instantly, your face changes. The jaw sets. And in that setting, harm is already taking shape. We think of harm as the thing we do. The cutting remark, the door slammed, the cold silence that punishes. But before the hand strikes, the mind has already formed the fist. The violence begins earlier than we imagine. It begins in the intention, in the quiet resolve to push back, to wound, to make someone feel what we feel. Right intention asks us to look at this earlier moment, not the action itself, but the forming of it. The small violences we plan without calling them plans. You are standing in the kitchen. Your partner says something dismissive. You feel the sting of it. And then, before you are even aware of choosing, your mind is already composing the response. The words that will land hardest. The tone that will make them feel small. Your jaw tightens. The intention has already hardened. This is not about stopping yourself from speaking. It is about seeing what is happening before speech. There is a difference between reacting and noticing that you are about to react. The difference is thin, but it changes everything. Aversion moves quickly. It does not announce itself. It feels justified. Someone hurt you, so the mind reaches for something that will hurt back. This reaching feels like protection. It feels like standing up for yourself. But if you watch closely, you can feel the quality of it, the tightening, the contraction, the way the body braces. The jaw is just one place this shows up. Sometimes it is the shoulders rising. Sometimes it is the breath becoming shallow. Sometimes it is a coldness that moves through your chest, a hardening that feels almost physical. The body registers the intention before the mind names it. You do not need to judge this. You do not need to fix it in the moment. You only need to notice. Just once today, see if you can catch the moment when harm is still forming. Not when you have already said the thing or done the thing, but when the fist is still closing in your mind. This noticing is not easy. The mind moves so fast. By the time you realize you are angry, you have already planned 3 sentences. By the time you feel the hurt, you have already decided how to hurt back. The intention feels invisible because it happens in the same instant as the feeling. But it is not invisible. It has texture. It has a quality you can sense if you slow down enough. The tightening in your jaw before you speak is not random. It is the body responding to the mind's resolve. The resolve to defend, to correct, to punish, even in small ways. You might notice this while texting. Someone sends a message that irritates you. Your thumbs are already moving, typing something sharp, but just before you press send, there is a pause. In that pause, you might feel it. The intention sitting there, fully formed, waiting to become action. The fist closed. Or you might notice it while driving. Someone cuts you off. The anger flares. And immediately your mind is planning, honking, speeding up, gesturing. The action has not happened yet, but the intention is already complete. Your hands are already tighter on the wheel. This is what the teaching points to. Before the hand strikes, the mind has already formed the fist. The harm is not only in the striking, it is in the forming. And if you can see the forming, you have a choice you did not know you had. The choice is not to suppress. It is not to deny the anger or pretend you are not hurt. The choice is simply to see, to feel the jaw tighten and know what that tightening means. To sense the intention as it hardens and recognize it as intention, not yet as action. When you see it, something loosens. Not always, not every time. But sometimes, just the seeing is enough. The fist does not have to open. It opens on its own when it is seen clearly. The jaw softens. The breath returns. The words you were about to say are still there, but they have less force behind them. The intention has not disappeared, but it has lost its grip. This is the quiet power of wholesome resolve. Not the resolve to be good, not the resolve to never feel anger, but the resolve to see intention forming, to notice the moment before, to feel harm taking shape and recognize it while it is still only thought. We plan the next sentence before the current one finishes. We plan the next task while completing this one. We plan tomorrow, during today, next year, during this month. The mind moves like a machine that cannot stop producing, and what it produces most often is the next thing. This is not wrong. Planning has its place. But notice how little space remains between one intention and the next. Notice how the gap closes before we even realize it was there. A swing moves forward, then back. But between these two movements there exists a moment so brief we usually miss it. The swing reaches the end of its arc, and for just an instant it hangs in the air. Not moving forward anymore, not yet moving back, just suspended. The still point between the swing's forward and backward arc holds no momentum, no direction, no plan for what comes next. Our intentions move like that swing. One intention completes, and immediately another begins. We finish breakfast and plan lunch. We finish one email and reach for the next. The mind swings forward into the next moment, always arriving before the present one has fully settled. But what lives in that still point? What exists in the space where no intention has yet formed? In the space between breaths, no intention arises. Rest there. This is not instruction to stop planning forever. It is an invitation to notice what happens when we do not fill the gap. Just once, just for a moment, sit down. Not to meditate in any formal sense, not to achieve anything, just sit. For 3 minutes, do not plan anything. Not the rest of your day, not your next meal, not even the next moment. When the impulse to plan arises, and it will, do not fight it, simply do not follow it. Let it appear like a cloud and let it pass like a cloud. This is harder than it sounds. The mind reaches for the next thing the way a hand reaches to break a fall. It feels automatic, necessary, like something that keeps us safe. And perhaps it does, sometimes. But not every moment requires a plan. Not every gap needs filling. Watch what happens when you sit without planning. The body settles. The breath continues without your management. Sounds come and go. Light shifts. The room remains the room. Nothing collapses. Nothing breaks. The absence of intention does not create chaos. It creates space. In that space you might notice something. The planning mind is not the whole mind. It is one function, one movement, one habit. Beneath it, or around it, or perhaps prior to it, something else exists. Not a better mind, not a peaceful mind. Just awareness itself, present without needing to do anything about what it finds. The swing reaches that still point and hangs there. No effort holds it. No intention keeps it suspended. It simply arrives at the natural pause between movements. And in that pause, the swing is most fully itself, not defined by where it has been or where it is going, but complete in its momentary rest. We can meet that same point in ourselves, between finishing one breath and beginning another, between closing one tab and opening the next, between standing up and walking. These tiny gaps appear throughout the day, but we pave them over so quickly we forget they exist. Sitting for 3 minutes without planning is not about achieving stillness. It is about recognizing that stillness already appears, briefly, constantly, in the space between intentions. We simply do not rest there. We step over it, move past it, fill it before it can speak. What does it say, that gap? Nothing. It does not teach. It does not guide. It simply is. And in its simple being, it offers something the planning mind cannot: completion without needing to become something else. You will forget this. You will sit down to practice and immediately plan how long you will sit, what you will do after, whether you are doing it right. This is fine. This is the swing moving again. Let it move. But when it reaches the end of its arc, when it hangs for that brief instant before reversing direction, notice. Do not grab the moment. Do not try to extend it. Just notice that it exists. The quiet power of wholesome resolve does not come from better planning or stronger intention. It comes from knowing when to let intention rest, from recognizing that the space between plans is not empty. It is full of presence, full of breath, full of the world as it actually is before we decide what to do about it. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of space. And in that space, nothing needs to happen. Nothing needs to be resolved. The mind can simply be without reaching, without building, without moving towards the next thing. This is where right intention begins. Not in better plans, but in the willingness to pause before planning. Not in stronger resolve, but in the recognition that resolve itself can rest. We often believe that changing our mind means something has gone wrong, that a shift in resolve is evidence of weakness or confusion. We set an intention in the morning and expect it to hold firm all day, as if the mind were made of stone and the world around us never moved. But intentions arise in conditions. They meet the weather of the moment. A path that curves around a boulder instead of trying to move through it is not a path that has failed. It is a path that has met what is actually there. The Buddha spoke of this with a simple image. The wise person adjusts the sail when the wind changes without shame. Not because they lack conviction, but because they see clearly. The wind is not a problem to solve, it is part of the journey. We forget this when we treat our intentions as vows carved in wood. We decide to be patient, and then impatience arrives. We resolve to stay focused, and then distraction pulls us elsewhere. Instead of meeting the new conditions with curiosity, we turn inward with blame. We think the intention was supposed to protect us from change. But change is not the enemy of intention. It is the ground on which intention walks. Right intention, in the Buddhist sense, is not about forcing the mind into a single shape. It is about inclining toward what is wholesome again and again in the conditions that are actually present. Renunciation when clinging tightens. Goodwill when aversion hardens. Harmlessness when aggression stirs. These are not achievements we lock into place. They are directions we turn toward over and over as the landscape shifts. When your intention changes, something real has happened. Maybe the body is more tired than you thought. Maybe new information arrived. Maybe the heart softened or the mind cleared. The path curves because the boulder is there. To insist on the original line would be to walk into stone. This does not mean we abandon all continuity. It does not mean we drift without care. It means we stop confusing rigidity with integrity. A tree bends in the wind and remains rooted. The bend is not betrayal. It is how the tree survives. You can notice this in small ways. You intended to work through lunch, but hunger became sharper than expected. You intended to stay silent in a conversation, but something true needed speaking. You intended to meditate for 20 minutes, but after 10 the mind was clear and the body wanted to move. In each case, something changed. The question is not whether the change was allowed. The question is whether you met it with awareness or with shame. Shame arrives when we believe intentions should be immune to impermanence. But intentions are made of the same fabric as everything else. They arise, they serve, they shift. To see this clearly is not to lose your ground. It is to stop building your ground on sand and calling it granite. There is a practice that makes this visible. Notice one intention that changed today and let it change without self-criticism. Not a dramatic shift, just a small one. You planned to respond to a message and you did not. You thought you would feel one way and you felt another. You set out to do something and the conditions did not support it. Instead of tightening around the gap between plan and reality, see if you can meet the change as information. What was actually present? What did the shift reveal? The path curved. What boulder did it move around? This is not about excusing carelessness. It is about recognizing that wholesome resolve is alive, not static. It adjusts, it responds, it learns from what arises. When you notice the intention that changed, you are not looking for failure. You are looking at impermanence in action. You are seeing that the mind is not a machine that runs a program. It is a process that meets conditions. The more you practice this, the more flexibility begins to feel like wisdom instead of weakness. You stop needing your intentions to prove something. You stop using them as a way to control what cannot be controlled. You let them be what they are, a wholesome inclination meeting the moment as it is, not as you wished it to be. The path curves, the sail adjusts, the intention shifts without losing its direction. And you walk forward, not in shame, but in the quiet power of seeing clearly. You light a candle in the evening. The flame catches, steady and warm. Then the window is opened just slightly, and a breeze moves through the room. The flame goes out. You could decide the candle is broken. You could decide you are not the kind of person who can keep a candle lit. Or you could strike the match again. Right intention works this way. It is not a vow you make once and carry forever without interruption. It is the quiet movement of turning the mind toward what is wholesome and then turning it again when it drifts. The drift is not the problem. The belief that one drift means total collapse is the problem. We carry a strange idea that the spiritual path requires perfection from the start. One moment of irritation, and we think we have failed at loving kindness. One flash of greed, and we assume generosity is beyond us. One selfish thought, and the whole structure seems to crumble. But this is not how intention actually works. Intention is not a single decision. It is the repeated inclination of the mind, moment after moment, toward what leads to less suffering. When the candle goes out, you do not throw it away. You light it again. The wind may come again. You light it again. This is not failure. This is the practice. There is a teaching in the early tradition that each moment offers a fresh opportunity to incline the mind. The past moment is gone. What happened there does not bind the present unless you insist it does. If an unwholesome intention arose earlier today, that moment has already passed. It does not need to define this moment. You do not need to carry it forward as proof of who you are. This is not about pretending the unwholesome intention did not happen. You notice it, you see it clearly. You might even feel the small contraction it left in the body, the residue of aversion or grasping. But seeing it does not mean you must build a story around it. You do not need to decide you're the kind of person who always acts this way. You do not need to predict that tomorrow will be the same. You simply see what arose, and then you begin again. Beginning again is not dramatic. It does not require a grand gesture or a new commitment ceremony. It is as simple as noticing the breath and letting the next intention be a wholesome one. Maybe you felt irritation toward someone an hour ago. Right now, you can let the mind incline toward patience, not because you are erasing what happened, just because this moment is new. The metaphor of the candle is useful because it removes the weight we place on continuity. We think the path is a straight line of unbroken progress, but a candle that keeps going out and being relit still gives light. In fact, that is what most candles do. The one that never flickers is rare and maybe not even necessary. What matters is the willingness to strike the match again. After one unwholesome intention today, you can simply begin again without story. This is the practice. Not later, not after you have reflected enough or punished yourself into readiness. Right now. The mind can incline toward what is wholesome in this breath, in this moment of seeing or hearing or standing still. You do not need to analyze why the unwholesome intention arose. You do not need to trace it back to childhood or to yesterday's stress. You can, if it helps, but it is not required for beginning again. Sometimes the mind just moves toward aversion or greed because that is what minds do. The wind blows and the candle goes out. You light it again. That is all. This is not bypassing or spiritual bypassing or pretending everything is fine. It is recognizing that clinging to the failure is just another form of clinging. You can see what happened, acknowledge it, and still choose not to make it into an identity. The intention that arose 5 minutes ago does not have to become the theme of the day. What makes this feel natural instead of dramatic is repetition. The first time you begin again, it might feel effortful. You might wonder if you are doing it right. But the 50th time, the 100th time, it starts to feel like what it is. Just a return, just a quiet shift. The candle goes out, you light it. The mind moves toward aversion, you notice, and you incline it back toward patience or kindness, or simply toward seeing clearly. Beginning again becomes less like a moral victory and more like breathing. You breathe in, you breathe out. The breath stops, it starts again. No drama, no story about whether you are good at breathing, just the natural rhythm of returning. We carry the idea that intention must be gripped tightly, or else it will slip away, that if we relax our hold, we will lose direction. This is the tension we bring to resolve itself, as though firmness and ease cannot live in the same gesture. But consider a tree rooted deep in the earth. The wind comes, sometimes gentle, sometimes fierce. The branches bend. The leaves turn and scatter. Yet the tree does not uproot. It does not clench against the wind. Its steadiness comes not from resistance, but from depth. The roots go down where the soil is still. Right intention is like this. It is not the white-knuckled grip. It is not the voice that shouts commands at the mind. It is the quiet knowing of what matters, held lightly enough that it does not fracture under pressure. The teaching from the Zen tradition says that true resolve is like a mountain, unmoving yet requiring no effort to stand. The mountain does not labor to be a mountain. It simply is. We confuse effort with strain. We think that if something matters, we must bear down on it. But strain is not strength. Strain is the mind's attempt to control what cannot be controlled by force. When we hold intention this way, we exhaust ourselves. The resolve becomes brittle. And when difficulty comes, it snaps. There is another way. You can hold a wholesome intention, the way you might hold a single breath in awareness, not squeezing it, not pushing it away, just noticing it is there. The intention to speak kindly, the intention to meet this moment without turning away, the intention to see clearly, even when clarity is uncomfortable. These do not need to be carved into stone. They can rest in the mind like a bird resting on a branch, present but not pinned down. Equanimity is the ground here. It is what allows resolve to be both real and spacious. Equanimity does not mean indifference. It means the mind is not thrown by every shift in circumstance. It means you can know what you intend without demanding that the world cooperate immediately. The tree bends in the wind, but it does not lose its roots. The intention remains, even as conditions change. You might try this now, or later when the moment feels right. Choose one wholesome intention, not a long list, not a plan for the year, just one. Perhaps the intention to listen without interrupting, or the intention to notice when the body is tense and soften just slightly. Hold it in awareness for 5 breaths, not as a command, not as a test, just as something you are noticing. Breathe in, and the intention is there. Breathe out, and it does not disappear. 5 breaths, nothing more. What you may notice is that the intention does not need force to remain. It stays because it is aligned with something deeper than preference. It stays because it is wholesome, and the mind recognizes wholesomeness the way the body recognizes rest. This is not about willpower. It is about clarity. When you see clearly what leads toward harm and what leads away from it, the resolve to move toward what is wholesome becomes natural. Not automatic, but natural, like water flowing downhill. The teaching does not ask you to become rigid. It asks you to become rooted. There is a difference. Rigidity breaks, roots hold. When the wind comes, and it will come, the tree does not argue with the wind. It does not collapse in despair because the wind exists. It bends, and because it bends, it remains standing. This is the quiet power of wholesome resolve. It does not announce itself, it does not require applause, it is simply there, steady and easeful, even in the midst of change. The mountain does not effort to stand, the tree does not effort to root, and your intention, when held with equanimity, does not need to be forced. It can rest in awareness, clear and present, bending when it must, but never uprooted. We have been sitting with intention, this quiet force that shapes the inner life. Not the loud declarations we make to ourselves in moments of ambition, but something softer. The gentle turning of the mind toward what is wholesome. The small choice to meet this moment without harm. It is easy to think of intention as something we must build, something we must strengthen through effort and discipline. and there is a place for effort. But right intention is also about noticing what is already present. The natural inclination of the mind, when it is not caught in craving or aversion, is toward kindness, toward clarity, toward letting go. You do not have to manufacture goodness. You only have to stop feeding what obscures it. When you notice the mind turning toward resentment, you can pause. Not to shame yourself, not to force the resentment away, but simply to see it. To feel the tightness it creates in the chest, the heat in the face, the way it narrows your vision. And in that seeing, there is space. Space to ask quietly, what happens if I do not follow this thought? What happens if I let it pass? This is the practice, not perfection. Not the absence of unwholesome thoughts, just the willingness to see them and choose differently. Right intention does not ask you to become someone else. It asks you to notice the intentions you already carry and to tend them with care, to water the seeds of renunciation, goodwill, and harmlessness, to let the others rest unwatered until they fade on their own. There will be days when the mind is turbulent, when old patterns return with force, when you find yourself caught in wanting or pushing away or wishing things were different. This is not failure. This is the nature of a mind that has been conditioned over years, over lifetimes perhaps, to seek pleasure and avoid pain. You do not need to fight it. You only need to see it clearly. And in that clear seeing, intention can shift. Not through force, but through understanding. The Buddha spoke of intention as the forerunner of all action. What you intend shapes what you do, and what you do shapes who you become. But intention is not a single moment, it is a continuous process. A stream of small turnings, small choices, each one an opportunity to align with what is true. And the beauty of this practice is that it does not require grand gestures. It does not require you to retreat from the world or to renounce everything you hold dear. It only requires attention, the willingness to notice what arises in the mind and to meet it with honesty. You can practice right intention while washing dishes, while walking to the door, while listening to someone speak. In each moment, there is a choice. To meet what is here with grasping or with openness, with resistance or with acceptance, with harm or with care. The path is not somewhere else. It is here, in the quality of your attention, in the softness or hardness of your response, in the space between stimulus and reaction. As we come to the end of this reflection, let the concepts fall away. Let the words settle. There is nothing you need to hold on to, nothing you need to remember or achieve. Bring your attention back to the body. Feel the weight of it wherever you are sitting or lying. Notice the points of contact, the pressure of the surface beneath you, the temperature of the air on your skin. And notice the breath, not controlling it, not shaping it, just feeling it. The gentle rise and fall, the cool air entering, the warm air leaving, each breath arriving on its own without effort. Let the mind rest here, in the simplicity of breathing, in the quiet presence of the body. If thoughts arise, let them. They are not the enemy, just passing weather. You do not need to follow them or push them away. Just return to the breath, return to the body. This is the ground. This is where intention becomes real. Not in the thinking about it, but in the returning, again and again, to what is simple, to what is here. If you would like to continue exploring these teachings, there are other reflections waiting. But there is no rush. You can simply rest here for as long as you need, breathing in, breathing out, the body present, the mind quiet, nothing to do, nowhere to go, just this.